What is going on, guys? It is I once again, Coach Dom, with my beautiful and amazing co-host, Coach Kiani. And today we have special guest, physical therapist, strength coach, co-creator of Old Bull Athletics, Katie Dabrowski. This is another episode of the No BS Fitness Prescription podcast, and we are coming in with a great episode today, talking all things physical therapy meets strength and conditioning, merging the lines, and a big emphasis on metabolic health. Katie, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Yeah, when was the first time we sat down together? It was the COVID times, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Crazy, crazy. So cool to be back and to hang out with you guys again. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about. I think something that I've been talking a lot more about lately, just like the metabolic health side of so much of what we do. I think as a physical therapist too, it's so important that we realize that I think a lot of our roles is so much more than like seeing somebody for this very transient short period of time for a very specific pain or injury they're coming in with. I think we leave a lot on the table when we just approach it from that lens. So that's kind of one side of why this metabolic health kind of idea of integrating that focus in our work I'm so passionate about. And then on the other side of the spectrum too, from a personal training and strength training perspective, I think it just really shows the value even more of how important it is for our strength coaches, our personal trainers, our group fitness instructors to really understand the importance of designing a training program that one of the goals is to optimally influence metabolic health and just shows us how much more important we are, honestly. Like, I think it's easy sometimes to be like, man, am I really getting this person where I want them to be? Or man, like I am I really doing the right program for this person? And if we center our goals around trying to improve people's like big picture metabolic health, we kind of can't go wrong. And I think it lessens anxiety, it decreases imposter syndrome, which I think we all have, and just helps us to realize like, oh, if I'm increasing this person's muscle mass, if I'm improving their aerobic and anaerobic systems, I'm doing the right things. And I think that's really, really important.
Starting off, like what originally pulled you towards physical therapy, like the base model, and then where in your specific career did you feel like a misalignment of things and that take you to the route that you've come up with now?
Yeah, I think like most people, I was a college athlete and I experienced an injury and went to physical therapy. I think most people kind of have similar origin stories. What's interesting though at the time, it wasn't at all on my radar of thinking of becoming a physical therapist. I had an awesome physical therapist, and I had, a good experience and all of those things that kind of would normally trigger that thought. But I was so in neuroscience research brain mode that I thought that was going to be the route that I was taking. So I studied neuroscience. My whole undergraduate experience was kind of wrapped around getting publications, presenting at conferences, and trying to get into some competitive like PhD programs to continue doing research. So I was pretty like narrow-minded, I guess, and I wasn't really thinking of other options. And so even going through that almost like traditional orange origin story experience didn't trigger the thought. Also, I love exercise, love training, always have, but still, like I was just kind of thinking of this one track thought of what I wanted to be when I grew up. So it actually wasn't until after I graduated undergrad that I realized I think I wanted to do something different. I actually was supposed to go the neuroscience PhD route, and I had this kind of epiphany with thanks to actually my really prolific like research advisor at a lab I was working at, the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis, which is a lab that's centered on traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury research. And I'm so thankful for this because in the moment I was like, what? My life is over. But the person I was working under actually sat me down and she said, Katie, I think you'd be really good at this, but I don't think you'd be happy.
Mm,
And it in that moment, think of, you're like 22 years old and you already think like, oh my gosh, time's running out. What do you mean? Like that mindset we have at that age. I thought my life was over. I couldn't believe somebody was telling me this. I couldn't believe that potentially I wasn't going to do the thing that I had basically planned like all of my academic career for thus far. Um, but she was very honest with me. She said, I think you're too social. I think you like a bit more interaction. I think you'll get burnt out with the not science side of this. Like, she was honest. She was like, when you get to the point of running a lab, you're not doing as much of the science anymore. You're fighting for grant money, and you're on that side of the desk. And I'm so grateful that she did that, because it completely rerouted my mind immediately. And I had this kind of aha moment of, I do like to work with people more than like researching rats, and I do like the fitness and the movement side of it too, and not just being on an electron microscope for 12 hours. And I started to think, like, what career options can give me kind of the best of both worlds? How can I do research and potentially work at a university, but how can I also work with clients and do the things that I care about on the physical side? And that's where I thought of becoming a PT. So kind of a roundabout way.
Mhm.
So I actually I worked at continued working in research, and actually worked as like an editor at a marketing firm for a couple years to make some money, and took classes at a community college to fill up the prereqs that I didn't have from my neuroscience major, and went to PT school a few years later. So kind of non-traditional. I say that I like sharing that story too, because I also think people often imagine that, like, if you don't go immediately into graduate school after undergrad, you're a failure, or you're behind, or you messed up. I'm so grateful I had that time off, because it actually helped me decide what I really wanted to do. I don't think I would be happy if I went purely the research route, and I'm just so thankful that it was kind of roundabout. So that's how I ended up as a physical therapist. And I realized as well that as much as I like neuroscience, I actually don't really like neurological PT. I like still the orthopedic side and applying the neuroscience principles to it. So it's just an interesting way of utilizing my experience still, that in the moment I thought was like very different from what my route was going to be as a PT, but it still kind of all comes back to neuroscience, which is cool.
Okay, I can definitely relate and appreciate that. I mean, I graduated college in 04, 05, and I just got my master's last year. So
Nice.
I
Yeah.
definitely see the difference. Even though I wanted to do PT school right away, there was a 2 year waiting list.
Mhm.
So I got into training, live life, and then we circled back. So with that, like in that time frame of doing different things, who were some of the mentors you had, and what different environments outside of like the clinical lab and things like that? What different environments shaped your now thought process to where you are?
It's a great question. Yeah, because I would say, going through PT school and kind of going through that experience and doing internships in the more like traditional model made me realize pretty quickly that that wasn't what I wanted to do. It's interesting though. I went to PT school during a time when it wasn't as popular on Instagram to have like PTs who had Instagrams and that you wanted to follow and see like, oh, that's what I want to do. So I kind of just took things I was learning at face value. Some of the things that were skills that I kind of knew deep down I wasn't really going to utilize. Like I'm not a big manual therapist person. I like exercise and movement the most. Or some things that we were learning where I was kind of like, it doesn't really seem like it follows like physiology. But I just kind of took it as what it was. And then when I got to internships and I realized, oh, this very busy kind of insurance model, that's not what I want to do at all. I had that moment. I think a lot of us have that moment when we're going through those internships. And I've always loved training and exercise. And I've been a personal trainer for longer than I've been a PT, and been strength training now. I'll be 34 in a couple weeks, and that's literally it'll be 20 years since I started strength training. And so I always have had that background. And I think ultimately my knowledge of strength and conditioning and exercise physiology is what kind of drew me to creating a physical therapy practice that follows that instead of maybe the more traditional models. So I think just like as my coaches in high school, the people who exposed me to strength training at such a young age in the early 2000s, when quite frankly it wasn't as popular for high school athletes, especially women, to get so exposed to strength training, like that was my first those are my first motivators for sure. The people who I got so lucky, and I had really good high school rowing coaches who knew the importance of strength training, and we lifted every Tuesday and Thursday in the morning before school. And like I just fell in love with being in the weight room. and how fun it was. And quite frankly, I was good at it. So it felt fun for that reason too. And that was like where it all started. If I really think honestly about it, those are the people where I was like, I want to do stuff like this. Like, this is
Yeah.
so much fun. How could you not want to work in a gym all day? Like, it's so cool. So that's really where it started. And then I think along the process of, finishing PT school and starting a practice where I was a personal trainer immediately, which was terrifying, but just forced me to be like, you got to figure this out. And if you want to do this the way that you say you want to do this is how we go that route. So the trainers that I was around, just that gym culture, that's my first influence of how I wanted to design a business down the line. And as I continued on this journey, there's so many clinicians that I've interacted with throughout the years, and people that I continue to learn from. Meeting Frankie, the original founder of Old Bull, was like a huge pivotal moment in my career. So it's interesting. It's beyond just like the researchers and the gurus that we think of. It's my coaches and it's the people that I met along the way where I was like, hell yeah, this is exactly what I want to do.
Right.
Can you talk about how it's really like important for physical therapists or rehab providers to have that strength and conditioning like background in order to deliver a good service to the patient on the
Yeah.
other end?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big frustration, and I think you can relate as a PT who's also a strength coach. Um, I don't understand where the disconnect went when exercise physiology became a separate field of study from physical therapy. To me, they're like, I do not understand how it could be separate. When we're rehabilitating people, it's all principles of exercise physiology and progressive overload and strength and conditioning. It's just maybe the dosage is different or the intensity is different, but I'm very confused, quite frankly, why there's a divide. There's a few schools that are starting to do a better job, I think, of like combining departments. Like the exercise science department is the like umbrella department, and then you have, physical therapy and exercise physiology in there. That's how I think it should be. I'm genuinely confused how it's not that way when principles of strength and conditioning, which basically really boils down to imparting enough of a stimulus to create an adaptation for change. If it's true for strength and conditioning, how the hell is it not true for rehab? It's even more important when we're trying to take somebody from quite a low level or an injured level to be able to then create an adaptation and get them to move forward. I think they're inextricably linked. I think it's impossible to separate the two. So I think, regardless of specialty that you'd like to go into as a physical therapist, because that's often the argument, right? Like, oh, well, I want to do peds, so it doesn't matter, or I want to do geriatrics, so it doesn't matter. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? Of course it matters. It's all bodies. It's all nervous system. It's all of it. So I think the more the stronger your foundation is and just understanding those principles, the better. And for you as a PT to train as well and to know what this stuff feels like and to know how to get in different positions that challenge different muscle groups and know what things feel like. I think it's impossible for it to not be important.
Yeah, I agree. I sometimes think it comes down to like when they made the physical therapy degree a doctorate. I feel like some physical therapists got on this high horse and like that separated it, and they want to look different from personal trainers. But
That's a huge part of it too. I will never forget when I was first talking to a few people, professors, about wanting to open a practice in the style that I wanted to do it, and especially also at a time when cash PT was not as common. Um, and I had quite a few professors who were really great mentors, and there were people who were like, "Hell yeah, do it!" And then a couple people were like, "Well, aren't you scared of people just thinking you're a personal trainer?" And I was
no,
like, what? Like, what do you mean? I don't give a shit. Like, I don't understand why you're so concerned about that. I am a personal trainer. Like, what? And it's this weird thing of a label and a degree that I almost feel like, to defend the amount of money that we're forced to spend to get this degree, we have to be like, but, I'm different. Look, look.
yeah,
And I also think, like, how many times have you heard this too? Oh, why didn't you want to go to med school? As if we chose being PTs, or we only are PTs because we couldn't go to med school. And I didn't want to be a doctor. Like that's not, it didn't interest me. I want to be a meathead in the gym. So this idea that you almost have to qualify your decision to be a PT as if it's so different from a personal trainer, or it's because you couldn't be a physician, or you're comparing yourself and wanting to almost like over medicalize what our degree is. I think that's part of the issue too. I think we've over medicalized and created this very biomedical approach to injury that negates a lot of the exercise physiology principles. Again, out of fear in quotations for like, oh my God, what if somebody thinks you're a personal trainer? I am. Like, what?
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I think now that you said it and how I'm looking at it, I don't, it possibly could be because there is no true governing body with the whole personal training language right now. Because when you look at it, it's like everybody's like, oh, well, you're a PT because you couldn't be a physical therapist, or you weren't smart enough to be a physical therapist, so you're a PT, or you're a athletic trainer because you weren't smart enough to be a PT, or you're a strength and conditioning coach that moonlights as this because you weren't able to do this.
Mm.
But technically, all of those things encompass the same. Like my degree was exercise leadership. At every other school, that's ex-phys and kinesiology. It's the same
Hmm.
thing. And I think so many people try to change the naming and the framing of it, where now it's like people are like, oh, and I'm guilty of this, but I'm not a personal trainer. I'm a coach. I'm not a
Right.
coach. I'm a personal trainer. I do this and this, and I only work with athletes. But at the end of the day, outside of those two realms, you're a personal trainer. Now, it's up to you to decide to go beyond your one basic certification and get higher level thinking and higher level credentials. But I think that's where some of the lines got mixed. And then you also have so many different, well, I'm a personal trainer and I've got this corrective exercise cert. I took this course where I can do these things, but I can't touch the person. Well, how different is that from a PT? Or then you have all of the people that do manual therapy or stretch, but they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing. It is confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing. And this is one of those things that I think is kind of the blessing and the curse of how we're able to really in the United States, like manipulate what our training is and what our degree is to kind of create careers that we want. Like, I think it's an awesome thing because my degree, I've leveraged it to be able to do different things that maybe don't look only typically like what you think of when you think of a physical therapist. And personal trainers have been doing that forever
Yeah.
because there isn't a governing body and you can kind of manipulate which I think in a great way, like how you can run a business, how you can offer services. I think that's awesome. And I think that's like a net positive by and large, but it does get really confusing when, let's be honest, like physicians don't really know what physical therapists do or what we're capable of. So do you think the general public does? Like, it's just confusing. Nobody knows what the hell any of us do. And the amount of times that I'll get things from like so many ends of the spectrum, I'll get asked questions that where I'm like, that is so not in my scope, but thank you for thinking I would know that, to like, oh, did you have to go to school for this? And I'm
Oh
like,
my
would you
god.
like to see my student loan balances? Because yeah, I did. So I just like people have no idea what we do.
Yeah.
So I think it's a weird thing. Like it gave us all, the three of us, the freedom to create kind of a careers that aren't the like cookie cutter what we think of, but it also makes everybody not know who is doing what or what our expertise is really in.
Yeah, because
I think
I've gotten, oh, you're not a dietitian? Fuck no. You I thought you had, my biggest one that I get now is I thought you had this. Yes, yes. One day, as soon as I passed the test, but everybody's like, well, how do you know this? And I'm like, you can read. And then also
Yeah.
who your network is in the field based off of mentors and what you learn and who you learn from is going to help you level up faster than anything else.
Absolutely.
So it's, yeah. What are you gonna say, Keith?
No, I was just gonna say that I think that the freedom is good, but I also think another thing is just like people having discernment on like actually vetting the person that they want to work with. I feel like the physical therapy, like DPT degree, is very marketable, and I also think anything is marketable nowadays if you do it the right way, even if you're just a personal trainer that has taken a bunch of courses and you're knowledgeable. I think just showing how you can add value to somebody and how you can take somebody from like where they are to where they want to be, and then that creating that buy-in, and then the person having discernment to be like, hey, is this person for me, is everything. But I think with social media, everything is long. It's not long form. It's very short and it's clickbaity. So people
Yeah,
don't have the opportunity to really see what people are about, or they don't take it a step further. So I think that's also what plays a role. But I think
That's a great point.
it's great. It's good, but it's also could be a bad thing depending on like who's consuming it.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
really
biggest thing.
similar to like the issue of, yeah, people not really knowing what we do, so we can make our own lane, but then also it confuses people. It's like pros and cons. I feel the same way with social media. Like the net positive, I would say, is we have to all be honest that more people are aware of exercise and strength training than they ever were before, and we have to thank social media for that. I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s when the example of what I was supposed to look like was like Kate Moss, rail thin, and I wasn't getting exposed to strength training. I got lucky that I joined a sport that my coach knew that we should strength train. Whereas now you see like younger kids are getting exposed to people exercising on the internet. And that's awesome. Like that's very different than anything that any of us grew up with, or what we maybe even had the capacity to think that would be accessible to the general public. Like growing up, you only really knew about lifting if you played a sport, and we didn't even consider it like strength training. It was just you do this because it's practice, and you have to do it with your team. It wasn't as thought of, at least in my experience. So I think like net positive is it's there, like exercise being a little bit more mainstream, I guess you could say. But then also the negative side, of course, is anybody can say anything, and if it looks professional enough, I'm sure you guys have seen this. I have for sure seen people on social media where you can tell they're not on a podcast, they're sitting by themselves, but they made it look like somebody asked them questions to
Yes.
look reputable. Like that's wild. But you can do that,
It's
and you
like
can say anything you want.
it's like some type of like workshop. I've seen people like business coaches like promote it. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking
And
about.
you're like, I can tell that you're in just like a corner of your studio. Nobody is there. And it just looks like you're on a podcast. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
So there's,
So,
sorry, my dog's barking. I'm not sure if that's coming through. But and yeah, so it's good and bad, right? Like I still think it's good that more people are at least exposed to what the hell strength training is, because it's that important for people to see. But it's the Wild West out there.
Yeah. I think that's a good segue into your course. Training is healthcare.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I love the name because I think that there's like this big separation, like strength training, like you said, and then like healthcare with medicine and stuff. Can you talk about like what that course is all about, who it's for, like who can take it and benefit from it? And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I that course actually started a while ago now. It's been probably 5 years since I first did it, and it started as just like an in-service for Equinox trainers, because we at Old Bull have a wonderful, great relationship with Equinox, where we work with a lot of their coaches, because we tend to get other people in the fitness industry who, if they have injuries, they come and see us because they're like, we want to keep lifting, help us keep lifting. And we also see a lot of their clients, and the trainers will come in for the evaluation so we can all collaborate and kind of create the plan together, which is one of my favorite types of like collaborations to do. I just love working with really good coaches. So I started to notice kind of a theme of patterns of questions that a lot of the trainers would ask me about things. And it sparked this idea of like, oh, there is like this gap to fill of maybe some of the curiosities and questions that I think can really help trainers feel more confident with navigating pain, or maybe because some of those ideas of like, is this exercise, safe in quotations or not, or does this form matter as much, things like that. So I kind of put together those questions and created just like an in-service, like an hour lecture, on some really big picture themes that were covered. And then it kind of grew a little bit more, and I turned it into like a weekend workshop that initially, again, was kind of for Equinox coaches. And then I started getting other trainers being like, hey, I don't work at Equinox, but can I come too? And that's where the idea was like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, this is for everybody. And it's since expanded to where I would say not only strength and conditioning coaches and trainers are the main audience, but a lot of rehab providers who want to kind of level up their S&C knowledge too. So the kind of foundation of the course is to think in patterns about the typical aches and pains that we see in just like a general population training client population. We're not talking about traumatic injuries. We're not talking about post-operatively. We're talking about Karen from accounting who just started training and her knee kind of hurts when she does step ups, like stuff that we all encounter all of the time. So, how do we take that stuff and rule out the need for a specific diagnosis and approach it kind of regardless of what the letters are after our names? And my whole goal with the course is to kind of show people, trainers, rehab providers, we're doing the same thing. It just exists on a spectrum. And there's things that are completely within the scope of practice that overlap. And then there's like some stuff over here that's appropriate for a PT to handle. And then there's this stuff over here that I have to refer out to a physician. So kind of helping people to navigate, there's a lot more overlap in our fields, especially when it comes to general musculoskeletal pain. Again, not traumatic stuff, not somebody who comes in who played soccer over the weekend and their knees blown up and they can't put weight on it. That's not the person that we're talking about here. Just the general stuff that we all see. And it's evolved since then, which has been a very humbling and cool thing, to where I get to travel every year and I go to really cool gyms who want to host it all over the country, and it's been a blast. It's one of my favorite things that I get to do for sure.
Can you talk about your like decision making when it comes to knowing when somebody is appropriate for physical therapy versus like just working with a strength and conditioning coach? I think that'll be helpful for people, just because there's always a question of, oh, I hurt my knee. Like, should I continue working with my personal trainer or should I go see a doctor who's going to send me to a physical therapist?
Great question. Yeah. And this is where, again, these are generalizations to everybody listening. There's always nuance to this stuff. But the things like kind of the triage that I'm going through and trying to help level up coaches and PTs and everybody to feel comfortable with, we want to rule out red flags first and foremost. And there's specific joint by joint red flags that basically are things that this is a stop, this is a you do not continue training type thing. We want to rule out that stuff first. There's general red flags, like if somebody did have a traumatic mechanism of injury, that's something that's not appropriate for a trainer to troubleshoot. And sometimes there's things that's not appropriate for us as PTs as well. If people, like for the lower body, for example, if you have extreme swelling, if you have something that is limiting your range of motion, like an extreme amount, like you can barely bend and straighten your leg, that's a refer out situation. If you have neurological changes, so changes in strength, changes in sensation, numbness, tingling, shooting pain, changes in bowel and bladder function, things like that. When I teach this too, I'm very clear that all of these things are quite rare. It's very rare to encounter those type of red flag neurological red signs, but the good thing about them being rare is once we rule them out, and they're obvious, like changes in bowel and bladder function, that's an obvious thing to rule out. Once we safely rule those out, like we're super safe to keep moving with these people. So red flags, that's like my first and foremost thing that we want to be sure. And then otherwise from there, it's a lot about just like I kind of think of two main lanes when I'm dealing with somebody with pain. I want to have this like really big list almost of the stuff that we identify that they can do without symptoms, that don't trigger them, that feel really good, so we can continue having a training stimulus. And then the other side of that spectrum is the stuff that maybe doesn't feel good right now, or the pattern they're scared of, or the pattern they associate with their pain. So we want to find those entry points to start kind of like picking away at it. I think where people can go wrong sometimes, as trainers, we have to remember what people are paying us for. It's usually for body composition and to like to build strength. It's not for mobility drills. It's not for rehabby corrective exercise in quotations. So I think that point that I just made is super important here. If you have somebody with knee pain, but hip thrusts, reverse lunges, deadlifts all feel awesome. I wouldn't ever suggest a trainer only focus on their knee pain on like the two movements that hurt them and do super low level stuff when we have all this stuff that we can work on. You know what else is fair game? Their upper body. Like really emphasizing the things that are completely fair game is the most appropriate way for a trainer to deal with pain. And then adding in those entry points, maybe a wall sit isometric to help with their knee pain. But if I make that their main exercise, I'm underloading them and I'm not actually doing my job like what they're paying me for.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, like what you just said there, I don't want to use, how do I say this nicely?
Just say
Because me and Kiani
This
get it
is
a
a
lot.
safe
Like
space.
we're in groups and it's like people be like, what do you know about tennis elbow? Well, before you ask this question, did you Google it? Did you chat GPT it like everybody else? Did you look it up before you came here and asked one that simple ass question? You have
Yep.
an elbow that's bothering you. Your whole other side of your body is fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of people's first response is, well, go see a doctor. To me, I'm like, go see a doctor of physical therapy. Probably not your primary.
Yeah.
They're just going to try to mask it. And then also, I personally feel like how you were saying, a lot of people don't actually know what it's like to train hard or train with intent. So they don't really know what they can do on the opposite side of that injury. But then when you look
Yes.
at athletes, we know like, okay, we played in a game last week, tweaked the ankle, but I need to play next Saturday. What am I going to do? I'm going
Yeah.
to rest the ankle, but I'm training the best of my ability that I can because I still have to possibly be aerobically ready to play in a game, injured or not.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think people really forget that part of it. I think providers do too. And I think partially it's when you're kind of trapped in more of an insurance model where, like, literally, if somebody comes in for their elbow, that's like all you're allowed to do.
Yeah,
And that's what I think is one of the biggest limitations of the insurance model, beyond the, of course, obscene reimbursement deductions and that what forces people to see so many patients per hour at once. But this really restrictive lens of like, this is what I'm here for, this body part only. And we're leaving a lot of healing on the table because to talk about from the metabolic health perspective, the somebody's systemic overall metabolic health has a hell of a lot more to do with their quality of their tendons that keep hurting them or their quality of their bones and their tissues that keep hurting them than zooming in on just that issue. If I have an extremely sedentary older adult with elbow tendon pain, they need so much more that's going to move the needle a lot more than just doing like a massage to their elbow. They need more muscle mass and better aerobics health to be able to actually make like their system work in the way that it should and to help the quality of their bones and their tendons and their muscles and their ligaments improve. People with poor metabolic health, which unfortunately is by and large the majority of our population. When I say metabolic health too, it's like an umbrella term for people kind of on the spectrum of being overweight or obese, and then metabolic syndrome, kind of like precursor to diabetes, and then diabetes. So this whole umbrella, like unfortunately, the vast majority of our population fits under it, and these are individuals who also we see having chronic painful tissues. And it's so much more about what actually their tissues look like because of their metabolic dysfunction, relating to the inability of those tissues to do their job very well. Individuals who are on that metabolic dysfunction spectrum have lower quality tendon and muscle, meaning you have more fatty infiltration and connective tissue within interwoven in muscle fibers compared to more muscle fibers. So that already paints a picture of how this stuff can kind of go awry. If I have less contractile tissue in the tissue that's supposed to contract and protect my bones and my joints, then I'm not going to be able to distribute the load of my life and my day-to-day activities very well, because of that poor quality of muscle. So that's going to put more pressure and more effort into the non-contractile structures like our bones and our ligaments, and can make those tendons and bones and ligaments degrade even further. So it's like this vicious cycle. The way I try to explain it to my patients, because it can be tough, right? Like I have somebody coming in for a really specific pain, and I'm like, cool, we're gonna work on that a little bit, but we're gonna do a lot of stuff that to you looks like I'm not paying attention to what you came in for. So I have to explain it in a way that I'm not talking at them and lecturing them, but the way I describe it is I call muscle mass the cheat code to life. The more we have of it, the better your whole body and your hormones actually function. Muscle mass is an organ system that regulates our hormones. It regulates blood sugar. It regulates testosterone and estrogen and progesterone. It regulates all of that stuff. The less we have of it, the less everything works the way that we want it to. And the more we have of it, the better things function, but also the more protection you have for your body against that potential trip when you like step outside and maybe you kind of like lose your footing off of a curb. If you have, for lack of better term, shitty muscle quality and you have fatty infiltration in connective tissue and it can't absorb your body weight and gravity when you fall off that curb, where do you think that load is going to? It's going to your bone. It's going to your non-contractile tissues, your meniscus, the stuff that's not really supposed to do as much as your muscles are supposed to do. So the more we can help people understand that, the better. Like I say it over and over again. Like it's the cheat code. It's what we have to get as much of. We want that in our bank. So throughout the lifespan, we can handle what life throws at all of us.
How do you get somebody to buy into that process when like people are expected to go to PT for like 8 to 12 weeks and be
Yeah,
fixed, right?
yeah. I think being in a non-insurance model is helpful, first and foremost. So I understand there can be limitations if people are not, and you have a little bit more of those like time restrictions that people talk about. I think first of all, the most important thing is to set the stage immediately when you meet with somebody. I always, when I sit down with somebody for the first time, say like, I want to know about what their experience with physical therapy has been before, so I can kind of explain like, okay, well, we do things a little bit differently here, and this is what we focus on. And so it's very clear from the beginning that maybe we do things a little bit differently that might look less traditional than what you're used to. So I think the more you can just like set the stage in your initial interaction with somebody, the better. And I do that literally immediately. It's like the first question that I ask. And I also need to have a really good understanding of their current relationship with exercise and movement. So finding out that information kind of really helps me weave in my side of the perspective on it of like, okay, well, a lot of the things that we're going to be focusing on when we're working together are just some big picture things that are going to improve how well your body does what we want it to do, because that impacts tissue healing and it impacts all of the things that we're going to really care about for the knee pain that you came in to see me with. So just the more we can be very upfront from the beginning that that's our goal, the better. And we have to remind people, like I'm talking about this stuff over and over again with my clients. I think something I've actually kind of more recently changed my mind on. I think when we get into the non-insurance model, or when we're talking about the many pitfalls of physical therapy, it's often that we don't have enough time with people to take a really comprehensive history. So I almost think there was a bit of an overcorrection in like the cash PT lane of like, well, now I do 2-hour evaluations and I sit and I learn every little inkling of information about this person. And while I think that's well intentioned, I think it also can detract our ability to more succinctly explain really what we're doing, because we kind of draw it out. It becomes this whole long process. And yes, your sleep habits are important, but that's not really what I can control, right? I can control what we do in here together from a physical standpoint, and the education I provide to hopefully have you go out in the world and make different choices with your movement. So I found that I was almost spending too much time like trying to get into the nitty gritty with everybody instead of getting a little bit more to the point. Like, I'm here to physically help you. This stuff is important, yes, and you need to be aware of it. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to be the person that's going to make you go from 5 to 7 hours of sleep. I'm not a sleep doctor. I'm not telling you at night, like, good night, it's time to go to bed now. So that helped to kind of direct what I was doing a bit better. And I'm a little bit more focused now on trying to get to movement a bit quicker with people, because most people who see us, especially people who maybe don't understand the style of treatment we're providing, that's more activity modification and movement based, they have a lot of preconceived notions and fear around exercise. So I firmly believe that if I'm trying to help people see that exercise is safe for them, and not only safe for them, but it's a non-negotiable for their long-term health, if I really waste any time and make it seem like, oh, we're not ready to move yet, I'm just perpetuating that idea. So that first session, yes, I need to take an important history, but I'm almost kind of doing it while I start moving with people. So I can start to set the precedence of like, movement is safe for all of us at every time, and it's safe for us to start right now. And like, we're going to start to develop this positive relationship with it as soon as we possibly can.
I can dig it. I can dig it. Key, were you going to say anything?
No, I was gonna say I like that. I feel like being in the insurance model, it kind of feels like you're, I think, just the oddball when you kind of like operate like that. But I think patients do. I think people gravitate to that. Like
I think so too.
I genuinely think that's how like people want to be. Like they want to move more. I just think it's the fear that holds
Yeah.
them back. So I think it works. It's just harder to do in an insurance model, obviously, because of the limitations that
For sure.
you
I
mentioned.
think what is possible across all models, no matter what, is to provide a positive experience for people and to be fun. Because I think that really matters. I think that so deeply is interwoven into people's pain experience is the negative mood and the depression and the isolation that comes with it. I think no matter what model you are in, you can make that session fun for somebody. And I truly think it's that important. Like, that is almost more important than any exercise selection. It's just making it a positive experience. So they're starting to associate movement with less fear and making them feel comfortable and safe where you are. Like, I think that it's that important. Um, I also think what is possible, like, respective of any location too, is to really try to anchor everything that you do with this person back to their identity. And when I say identity, I think most people think they come to physical therapy because of pain, but if we really boil it down and start to ask more questions, it's because of this part of their identity that they no longer feel connected to because of what their pain is limiting them from doing. So, no matter what setting you're in, no matter what type of provider you are, you can uncover that and make sure that all of the selections that you're choosing for exercise or for whatever intervention you're using is really very obviously tied back to that portion of their identity that they want to get back. And I think if we can really think that way, that makes this difference between, one on one for an hour in cash PT versus, I got three patients at one time in an insurance model. We can still make people feel special. We can still make people feel important, and we can still make them like regain their identity again, no matter what.
Agreed, agreed. So let's talk a little bit about Old Bull, right? Old Bull is not a gym or a clinic. It's more of like a philosophy, as you would say. As we know, of course, Frankie is the original creator of it. How did it come about? And you can, of course, you can speak for Frankie on the initial origin of it, but how did it come about from there? And then how did you get more into the rehab training hybrid mixture that you guys have now? And then why did you choose that model instead of separating the two like a lot of places do? Um,
Hmm.
I like how you guys have your model. I actually, when I lived in Washington State, worked at a sports performance facility where we also had a PT inside of it. That was one of our main components, and it was a world of a difference when it came to the adults and the athletes and how we built our return to play, or as we called it, return to living model, even faster than what normal society has it looking like.
First of all, I love that phrase, return to living. I think that's
Just thought of it.
awesome.
Boom.
I boom, write that down. That's awesome. I really like that. Yeah, so Old Bull kind of origin story. So yeah, Frankie Telfort, just a badass for everybody listening to. Pretty prolific football player and athlete and a coach all around. Like, he's ridiculous. It's very fun to train with because he just makes everybody competitive, but he just beats all of us. Like it's just not even a match. So we always joke too that like when you join Old Bull, like the first year strength gains that everybody makes like within that first year of joining the team with us, because they're just around all of us psychopaths lifting crazy all the time. Everybody's strength increases. It's very fun. But Frankie started Old Bull in 2015, so we just hit our 10-year anniversary, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And he he was in the college football world, the professional coaching world, and then was working at Equinox, and really liked that high end model of training and that one-on-one model and that very very individualized approach. But he kind of wanted it to feel a little bit more boutiquey and a little bit less of like the big box feeling. And so that kind of helped him pivot into deciding like, I think I want to do this on my own. So he started Old Bull with kettlebells in like the back corner of a Pilates studio, like just him and kettlebells, and that was really what started it all. Over time, he had moved into a small space in Miami, and built out just more of like a training team there. And I knew one of the trainers that worked for him because he actually would train me when I went to Equinox. So it's kind of like this full circle moment. And he had transitioned to working with Frankie at Old Bull, and it was Squatober. And back when I used to actually do a full Squatober program and squat for 31 days, that was rough. And the coach who worked under Frankie was like, "Hey, you should come in and do like your Squatober lift. Let's do it together." And I was like, "Oh, sweet, cool." So that was my first exposure to Old Bull. At that time, I had recently graduated PT school and started my own practice at a gym that I was a trainer at during school. So just for some context, and went in, did the workout with the trainer, and Frankie kind of overheard us talking and learned that I was a PT, and just could the conversations we were having could kind of tell that I'm a PT who lifts and very different than maybe average PTs. And he came up to me and he was like, I'm always referring out for physical therapy and it doesn't make sense to me. I think I should have it in house. Would you want to talk about that? And like he was, if there's one thing that you know about Frankie, he's direct, and when he wants something, he goes for it. And so I was like, oh, I mean, I appreciate it, but like I'm starting my business now. I kind of want to focus on that. But like, if you have patients that you think you would like me to see, I could come in on Tuesdays. Like I gave like a day that I would do it. I was like, let's try that for a year and see if we like how it goes. So we agreed to that. And like 4 or 5 months in, it was just so awesome. And it was so clear that he had already started to build something that was very similar to what I wanted. And he had such a wonderful, like, mission, and we were so aligned that I completely said, okay, let's do this. And I basically just like stopped my practice and joined with him. Um, and another thing about Frankie too, like as I said, if he wants something to happen and if he's passionate about it, he's going to go all in. He showed me what it would feel like to be his business partner immediately. He brought me in for decision making. He When we started to get busier, he was like, you can hire somebody, right? Like he just completely blew my mind that somebody who had started a business was so open to letting me come in and change things or add things or do things, and it was just life changing. So we're actually coming up on 7 years ago that started. And now we have 3 locations and a team of almost 20 people across all of them, and I'm like mind blown by it. And it was so much of like, I have so much respect for somebody who it's Old Bull's his baby, and he let other people come in and develop it even further. And I just think that's like an extremely high value like part of his character. So that's where we are now. It's crazy to think of where we've come to.
No, that's so dope because if I remember correctly, we met at me and Frankie met at Equinox. I took
Really?
I took a kettlebell workshop there, and I think if I'm correct, me and Frank we were one of the first two people to do Animal Flow with Mike Fitch when it came out.
That
'Cause
checks out. That
it was
checks out.
held at
Yeah.
yes, it was held at Equinox back when it was just like a class, and then it turned
Yep.
into the certifications and all of that. That's
Yeah,
so dope.
he's
So
it's interesting because Frankie's quiet. He's a little bit more in the background of things, and I just don't even think people realize like how interconnected he is in the fitness industry and like where he started from and what he's built because he's just a little more in the background, but he's a workhorse and he is when people ask about people get nervous about having business partners, I'm like, I honestly can't really give you advice because I hit the jackpot. We're like obsessed and passionate about the same exact things, but we're good at different things.
yeah,
So he's good at all the stuff that I do not like and I'm not good at, and I'm good at all the stuff that he does not like. So it's just this like perfect relationship that I don't have any advice for people because I'm like, I got lucky. I just met the right person. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. That's really what it is.
yeah. People are always like, well, Dom, would you ever move back to Miami? There's like maybe three options that would move me back there, and Old Bull has always been on that list. So like
Well,
you
that
never
means
know.
so much.
You
Yeah.
never know.
Keep us in mind, you know?
Hey,
Uh,
hey.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
I know like one question that you had asked too, because I know we have a few minutes, was just like how deciding to not separate the
yeah,
strength training and the rehab. So for people who maybe aren't aware, the way that our whole model is set up, every single rehab provider is also a strength and conditioning and performance specialist. So everybody can kind of dial up or down on that spectrum of where they need to meet somebody where they're at. So when we explain to clients what our services are, we meet you where you're at. When you come in, the session that you're having is where you fall along that spectrum of rehab and training, and we don't really differentiate between the two. So our pricing, it reflects that as well. Our single session and packages, it's very similar to just a traditional like personal training model. Everything is the same price, everything is the same. You're paying for a session, it's just what that provider is meeting you at for what you need that day. And we did that for a very important reason. If we're trying so hard to make people realize that rehab and training are the same thing, then I don't think it makes sense for our business model to separate the two. And I think the general big picture we're trying to get like the population to understand is that it is the same thing. We also didn't want to deter people from seeking out the service they need if the prices were different. If physical therapy is more expensive, that's a really easy thing to be like, yeah, I don't think I need that. So we didn't want to make it that way purposefully, and we didn't also want to unfairly and untruly make people think that there is a different level of service you get if you're working on physical therapy versus training. So those were important constants for us.
I like that. I like that a lot. Did I see on Instagram that you guys are adding Kairos?
So I have actually one and soon to be two rehab chiros on the team. So
That's so dope.
similarly with everything we're talking about, I don't care what letters are after your
Yeah,
name. I
yeah,
care about ideologically how you work with clients. So our rehab chiros practice the exact same way as our physical therapists
yeah.
do, and they're badasses. To brag, one in particular is a former Olympian, and one in particular is a former CrossFit Games athlete. Like actually current CrossFit Games athlete. So just to paint a picture of what we're dealing with, like it's not about their degree at all. Same
Mhm.
thing, we have a phenomenal athletic trainer as well, and for us we just all right, we lump everybody in, your clinicians, your rehab providers. So as long as ideologically and your education background is more in that like performance S&C exercise phys side of it, please, we want to hear from all of you. We don't really see the difference between those degrees.
I think that's so cool because I always get the question, like patients or clients always ask me, like, how do you feel about chiropractors? And I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't have a feeling. Like, I
I,
don't have.
I feel about good versus bad
Yeah,
clinicians. That's
yeah,
what I feel
yeah.
about. Yeah, because
Agreed.
there's some dog shit PTs too.
Yes.
So it's
Like, I
not
really don't
just
have a feeling. It's more
yeah,
like, do you
yeah,
know people?
exactly.
Are you able to make modifications and meet people where they're at and get them to where they want to go? So
Exactly.
I like to see that because I hate the distinction. Like PT, Chiro, personal trainer is more so like what is your knowledge base and how do you help people?
I think if people practice in the very traditional way that we think of when we think of physical therapists versus chiropractors, that's where you see differences. I think when people practice in this a little bit more like holistic interdisciplinary approach, that's where those differences completely fade away. So that's kind of another thing. Like a lot of the decisions that I've realized this, like a lot of the decisions that we make with Old Bull are also kind of to help the general population at large understand healthcare a little bit better. That training is part of it, that there's no difference between these providers, that when people are ideologically and educationally similar, it doesn't matter what those letters are. And so I kind of realized this past year, like in an effort to do this, because it's how I think the business can be really, really prolific and how we can help people. I'm also realizing like, yeah, it's also so we can show the world like this is actually what is correct and what is true. And there's not as many differences that we think, and it doesn't have to be so confusing and this like laundry list of different providers where it's like you just find the people who get it and stay around them and you'll be okay.
Yeah. If there was one thing that you would add to Old Bull over the next, let's say 5 years, like what's something that you're looking forward to adding or
Great
improving?
question. Great question. Honestly, bringing on more like talented people is just the most fun thing in the world. And selfishly, I just get to benefit so much because I get to learn from people. Like every day is like a continuing education course because my whole goal is I'm trying to hire people who are better and smarter than me every single time. And I just get to learn from them. And that's so much fun. So I'm genuinely excited for that. Something that we're really passionate about trying to create, which is difficult because the size of our spaces isn't so big. But we want to try to create an offering for some more group options that help with the big mission that we care about, with helping people meet like physical activity guidelines. And it's harder to do for only one-on-one. We don't have the manpower. Not everybody can afford to do it in that way. So we would love to create similar to what Reload, an amazing place in New York City, where Ryan Chow, who runs Reload, and their team is just phenomenal. They have something called Move Without Limits, and it's a monthly subscription to come in and to be able to follow a program that's individualized for you, but you're working out with other people. And it's more touch points. It's a price point that's more reasonable for people, and it's still individualized, but you get the community aspect, and then you get like help with meeting those PA guidelines. We would love to do something like that. So we're trying to figure out a way. It might not look exactly like Move Without Limits, but that's like an inspiration for us for sure.
Yeah, the facility that I'm at now, we have that similar model. We have one-on-one, and then we have like I don't want to call it like a group model aspect, but it's like a hybrid model where
Yeah.
you go from your one-on-one prescription to now data driven. Your program is delivered, via an app, but you're still around
Yes.
other people and coached at the same time. So
Yes, More Than Movement in Philadelphia. Nick Pigruni runs that facility. He's amazing, and they have a model like that as well. And that was another one that I saw where I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." People kind of start one-on-one with a PT, and then they transition to that hybrid, and it's awesome. So like that just shows you there's a million ways to create a business in this space that can be super successful, and they might all look a little bit different, but those are definitely some areas I'm drawing inspiration from.
nice, nice. So in closing, right? What are your like workout wise? What are your favorite lifts? What are
Oh.
you? What are you? I dove into some other podcasts already. So, what are your favorite lifts? What are you training for now? And where do you see your vision and things going in like the next 3 years?
Great questions. Okay. Uh, Favorite lifts, reverse lunges or kickstand deadlifts are my favorite, and weighted pull-ups. So those two. Um, what was the second question? I already forgot it.
Fuck, what was it? Oh, where do you see yourself with your training and whatnot?
Oh,
Like
yes. What
over
am
the
I
next,
training for?
yeah, like are
Yes.
you, yeah, what are you training for? Things like that.
I'm training for life. I'm
Okay,
training to
yes.
be as jacked as possible.
Okay,
I always tell people I want to be confusingly jacked at every decade. I want to scare people.
I like
So
it.
that's part of it. But also I really love like trail runs in crazy places. So every year, twice a year, my fiance and I pick some absurd mountain to run up and down. And that's kind of a thing, a bonding activity for us. And we do that every year in addition to kind of like trying to stay as strong as possible while training for something like that. So I like kind of best of both worlds. And then where do I see things going in 3 years? Do you mean from like a training and fitness perspective or just
Yeah,
general?
I was gonna say, are you connected with Complete Human Performance, Alex
I
Viada?
am.
Okay,
Yes, yes, yes,
because you
yes.
said
They're
trail running,
awesome.
and I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Alec Blennis was my coach for like 3.5 years. Like he's
okay,
amazing. Yeah. And Alex Viada, I've like pour through all of his books. They're phenomenal.
yeah,
I would say training the next 3 years, honestly, it's very similar. Like I really love being able to have this kind of side of trail running and hiking and just like exploring in nature and feeling really capable to do that. And then I also want to be like stupid strong in the gym, but not to the point that it detracts from my ability to like run up a mountain and not die. So
right.
that's pretty much my goal, like run up a mountain and not die and then keep PRing my lifts.
Awesome, awesome. Well, yeah, this was great. So, Katie, for the people that want to learn more about you, maybe get some training from you, some education, take your courses, where can the people find you?
Instagram is always the best place. So that would be a great spot to see anything that is going on. My personal account, Katie Dabrowski, or Old Bull Athletics account, that's where you'll see anything that I'm doing from, podcasts like this to upcoming continuing education events, or even if you want to slide in the old DMs and ask a question, that's always fair game too.
Awesome, awesome. Well, hey guys, this was a great episode slash interview. There's a lot of gems and nuggets here from the rehab clinician space to just becoming the better everyday athlete that you possibly can. This is Coach Dom, Coach Key, and our special guest, Katie D. Thank you. This is the No BS Fitness Prescription Podcast with the unhinged perspective. See you guys soon.